Hi, and welcome to Adam Talks with me, obviously, Adam Carruthers. Still building up to the Euros. You wait for Euro 2020. I do wish they called it 2021, so it's not so confusing, but not too far away either. Today, we are focusing on Group E. So a little recap of how we got here. Spain qualified as the winners of Group F and are making their 11th appearance at the finals. They also have good pedigree within the competition, haven't won it 3 times in their history, including back-to-back. Not too long ago. Sweden finishes runners-up in a group and set to make their 7th appearance at the tournament, the best finish being the semi-finals of the 92 edition. Poland were winners of Group G, be appearing for the 4th time in their history. They'll also be looking to build on their best ever finish, which was in the quarterfinals in 2016. Finally, Slovakia, rounding up the group, taking the hard route as well via the playoffs. It's only their 2nd appearance at the tournament, their first being a round of 16 exit in 2016. All the matches are due to take place in either St. Petersburg or Seville in Spain. I'd like to welcome Ryan Conway, the athletics correspondent for the Euros, and also Dermot Corrigan, the athletics Spain correspondent for the Euros. Dermot, I'm going to jump in straight with you first and foremost. Spain, no Real Madrid players.
Yeah.
That is surprising because there's still 2 more slots open.
Hey, Adam. Yeah, that was the big news when Luis Enrique released his squad last week, especially Sergio Ramos not in the squad, and also a couple of people around it like Nacho, who people thought might get in. It's kind of, when you look below the headline, it's not that surprising really. Ramos hasn't had a great season at all. He has only played 4 times since Christmas. Excuse me. He's had a lot of injury worries. He's also getting on. He's 35. And Luis Enrique, I think, just decided it wasn't worth having him around the squad. And then you look at the rest of the Madrid squad, and most of their top players are not Spanish. You know, the guys who've been dragging them through the last couple of months to get to the Champions League semi-finals and into La Liga. It's Toni Kroos, it's Modric, it's Benzema. Spain or Madrid don't have very many big Spanish players anymore. And so, while it's a surprise and while it hasn't gone down well here at all, you know, there's a lot of people in the media, especially in Madrid, who don't like the idea of having no Real Madrid players in the squad. But Luis Enrique is a big personality, he's a big character, and he's made the call.
Ryan, what do you make of this? Because you told me off camera your first tournament you remember watching was the 2002 World Cup. So you haven't really known a tournament without Sergio Ramos. He's been a mainstay since 2006. We're talking 180 caps here.
Yeah, I think... and you see it a little bit with how Germany tried to transition into their new generation as well. I think things like this, it seldom go smoothly. You know, Ramos is an icon and was, you know, played a lot in qualification alongside one of Martinez or Albiol. I have a feeling that if Aymeric Laporte hadn't switched allegiances, I have a feeling that they would have taken him. I think him going over to Spain, Laporte going over to Spain was a big get for them right before the tournament. It almost feels like a transfer.
Yeah, it does. It really does.
But I think that, you know, not his qualities in the prime of his career and the remarkable season he had at City, I think he gave the squad a reason, and Luis Enrique a reason to leave Ramos out. There has to be a time for transition. You look at the Spain squad, and I think there's quite a lot of that in a lot of the positions.
But Dermot, with 2 spots spare, he's chosen 24 players. Surely you could afford 1 Real Madrid player, be it a Ramos. He can be behind the scenes. He can add experience. He knows what it takes to win a tournament. Someone like Nacho has played, Asensio, but there's not a single Real Madrid player there.
Yeah, Luis Enrique, when he kind of got out ahead of it when he released his squad, he said, look, I don't want to have too many players hanging around that know they're not going to play, that even won't be involved in the training sessions if we play 11 versus 11 at training. You know, in a tournament, somebody's going to be injured. You can always bring people in or out. That didn't seem completely believable to me. But I think that Luis Enrique, it's what you said there. Ramos is such a big character, a guy to have around the squad, that if he's not playing, that say Ramos decides that he is fit and Luis Enrique says, I don't think you're fit enough. We're going to go, as Ryan said, we're going to go with Laporte instead of you. I'm not sure having Sergio Ramos around the squad for 2 weeks or 3 weeks was going to be such a positive thing. Ramos, he dominates everything. It's difficult to overestimate what a big character he is here in Spain, in the media. You know, his partner is a famous TV personality. We're reaching kind of David Beckham style levels of somebody who's on the front pages and on the back pages as well. And if you have him in the camp and he thinks he should be playing, he knows a lot of the journalists quite close, his agent, his brother, you know, they've got that big Real Madrid media machine. And I think Luis Enrique has made a a big call that, you know, even leaving those two places is almost like letting him know that he's made this big call. But he's decided, look, Sergio, you're not as good as you used to be anymore. We don't think that you're the type of guy that we want to have. Maybe not quite as directly as saying that to him, but that's the message that he's given, and it's a ballsy call from Luis Enrique. And you know, Spain, as Ryan was saying, they're in transition. They don't have a lot of the great players that we've known from the years. They sailed through training or through qualification because they had an easy enough group, but in the Nations League, they've had some good results. They've had some wobbles as well. And, you know, it could go either way. This could be a new Spain team that clicks together and you know, goes really deep into the tournament. But there's very little sign of that yet. And if things don't go well, then having Ramos outside the squad, having no Real Madrid players in the squad, is not going to make things easy for Luis Enrique for sure.
I think when you look as well at Eric Garcia has gone, and you look at Laporte and Garcia, that could be the two pillars going forward of this, you know, Spanish back line. I think the biggest distraction could be, you know, cameras pan into a forlorn Sergio Ramos on the bench there. If you know, and all the talking points now, as Dermot said, if things start to go wrong and Spain suddenly concede three and four in a game, that's the natural conversation. You know, would Ramos have helped, and so on and so forth. But I think, as you know, if not now, then when do you start making your next, you know, centre-back pairing for the future? If not this tournament, then when? And I think with Garcia and Laporte in there, unfortunately, the young lions have come to take the throne from the old one.
Yeah, and it's interesting as well that Garcia's made fewer appearances for City this season than he did last season, with just 12 across all competitions, yet he makes the squad. Laporte not getting as much game time either, making, I think, 27 appearances. But that aside, how has the signing, I'm going to call it a signing, of Aymeric Laporte been taken by the fans of Spain?
Yeah, there has been mixed reviews, really. I'd say, like, it's got mixed up with there being no Real Madrid players, with Nacho, as you mentioned as well. Spain have had a problem at centre-back for quite a long time. For a long time, they had Ramos and Piqué, who were, you know, complemented each other really well, won lots of trophies together. Piqué resigned or retired from international football after the last World Cup, and Spain haven't, you know, they've cycled through 5 or 6 different options to see who would play alongside Ramos. Settled on Pau Torres of Villarreal, who's a really good cultured defender, really good on the ball. He looks like a super player. He's maybe, you know, physically he's not as decisive. He's not as aggressive. We saw in the Europa League final, he had some good moments. He had some not so easy moments again against Edison Cavani, who was physically stronger than him and maybe a bit more wily as well. So Spain have had a big problem at centre back, and that's why Aymeric Laporte's been talked about for a long time. Even, you know, maybe even before he moved to Manchester City, you know, 3-4 years ago, people were wondering, because he qualified for Spain, whether they would pick him up. It is interesting that the two City centre backs are not even playing for City and they're making the Spain squad. That kind of tells you how shallow the resources are for Spain at the back. Azpilicueta is a really interesting one. I think, you know, we saw him lifting the Champions League trophy at the weekend, and he's not a dedicated centre back. You'd imagine that they're going to have to play a back three if they play him. They haven't really played a back three in qualifying, and Luis Enrique has really left himself plenty of options, but also no settled idea of how the team are going to line up.
Yeah, still so many question marks. What about players that have not made it to the squad, Ryan, who are not Real Madrid based? Parejo, perhaps you could say, has an argument to be in it. Son Niguez as well, of Atletico Madrid, also has a say. Surely the two spots. I just can't comprehend it.
I do enjoy Sal at Atletico Madrid. I think when you look at that midfield with Thiago, Rodri, Pedri, Koke, I think maybe the one that could have been dropped potentially would be Sergio Busquets. But then, do you want to really start this mass exodus of players to bring in someone like a Sal Niguez? My answer to that would probably be no.
Understood. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's. I think the interesting one is sort of the attacking players that they've selected. This, you know, in the past we've had David Villa and Fernando Torres, and even before that, you know, Raul. And you look at this current sort of crop of Spain forwards that have been selected, and that there isn't really one that jumps out. And I think as you look around this current generation of Spanish players generally, I think it's a struggle to find the next great sort of Spanish centre forward. I think that to me is the thing that stands out more than anything.
That's what I also wanted to talk about. Where are the goals going to come from for you, Dermot? Because we have seen Spain operate that false nine principle to success, although that was a very different squad of players when they achieved that.
Yeah, it's been centre forward for Spain has been a debate for as long as I've been covering Spanish football, really, about who's the ideal kind of player to fit with. We always have lots of neat little playmakers, and then who's going to be the focal point in attack. Villarreal's Gerard Moreno has had an amazing season. He's already 29. He's not, a young gun, but he's forced his way into the squad. He scored 30 goals for Villarreal in all competitions. Scored that goal in the Europa League final as well. And he's a super interesting player because he's not a Fernando Torres style centre forward. He's maybe more like David Villa in that he's happy enough to get involved in the play. He sometimes starts from wide and can thread balls through to midfielders who are making late runs into the box. But again, he's got to 29. He's still at Villarreal. This is his real breakout season that he's kind of come onto the radars and looks. I think he's maybe only got 11 caps. He's got 5 goals in those caps. There's potential there, but again, how it all fits together and how it knits together is going to be really interesting to see. I go back to saying that this Spain squad, it's got the potential to maybe for everything to come together and to go really well. It's also got the potential to go really badly and to blow up. And here in Madrid, there's not a huge amount of confidence. Before we've gotten used to Spain going into tournaments. There was a while when they were the dark horses, and we'll see how they will go in the tournament. Then for a decade or so, it was like, Spain are one of the favourites for this. If they click, they're going to win it, or they're the best team around. Now we're in a stage where, they've had a couple of tournaments where they've fallen apart, really. It's a couple of embarrassing situations in tournaments. And this new squad, it's looking, it won't be such an embarrassment because there's not even that much expectation for them. There's a feeling that, if they get through to the knockout rounds and could even, if they were to beat a big team, it would be almost a surprise because Euro 2012 final is the last time that they've won a knockout game, which is pretty amazing, really. But that's the kind of the new situation that Spanish fans, they're not really used to yet, but they're kind of coming around to that kind of feeling.
Yeah. And
I think they missed a trick a little bit, not bringing Iago Aspas with them. Now, I'm a big fan of his, and I think statistically had a better season than Alvaro Morata, who presumably will be asked to carry a lot of the load for that Spain side in an attacking sense. I think Aspas is a really, really clever player. I don't know whether age, as Spain try and transition, played a factor in that, or maybe he didn't suit the style. But I look at those attacking options, and if Morata isn't really doing it, I'm not quite inspired by the rest in terms of a pure number 9. You look at Dani Olmo or Fernan Torres. Or even, Adama Traore on the wing is very exciting, but as a centre forward, I think they missed a trick by not selecting Aspas.
Yeah. Well, we talked about the strikers, and that's been a conundrum for Spain for a while. But one area for the last few decades that hasn't been an issue would be the goalkeeping situation. I remember Zubi Zabaleta was the mainstay, and then there was a slight transition period before Iker Casillas took over. He always had able deputies. More recent memory for the Casillas reign would be Victor Valdez and Pepe Reina. But right now, Dermot first here, who's going to be the number 1, and how much confidence do the fans, the media, and yourself have in whoever is chosen?
Yeah, not very much. I'm working on a piece that will go up on The Athletic before the tournament, based around the premise of a curse of the Spanish goalkeepers, because it's just been really difficult for them ever since Casillas was there for so long, and David De Gea was, he was almost playing for his best form at Manchester United while he was still the sub to Casillas. Casillas hung around at the top, had a really close relationship with Vicente Del Bosque, who also hung around for maybe a little bit too long. And then once De Gea took over, it didn't go well for him at all. The last World Cup in 2018 was quite disastrous for him, and there was a lot of the stats going around about how he saved only 1 of 13 or 14 shots on target that opposition had. It wasn't all his fault, I think it's fair to say, but his confidence dipped. He's never really got back to that form. Then Kepa came in. Kepa was going brilliantly for Athletic Bilbao, moved to Chelsea, the world's most expensive goalkeeper. At Chelsea, something goes wrong as well. His confidence falls. His relationship with Frank Lampard wasn't so good. He loses out. Unai Simon, who only came into the Athletic Bilbao team because Kepa moved to Chelsea. People hadn't really heard about him at all. He looked great for about a year. He was kind of the obvious young Spanish keeper to put into the team. He makes his debut during the qualifiers, and suddenly his form starts to fall apart as well. For Athletic, he's been very shaky at times. He made a couple of mistakes for Spain as well. So even during the last international window, Luis Enrique was saying how he doesn't have a number one. Everybody else was like, you got to sort it out pretty quickly because the tournament is coming up. But there's very few options around. It looks like it's going to be Unai Simon. You know, De Gea's experience in the Europa League final probably hasn't helped him either. If, you know, Luis Enrique was hoping that he might get his confidence back ahead of the season. They brought in Robert Sanchez from Brighton, who, you know, we haven't seen that much of, especially here in Spain. He was kind of a name that came out of the blue to a lot of the Spanish fans here in Spain. And so it looks like Unai Simon is going to try to build his confidence up ahead of the tournament. But again, you know, if you've problems in goal, you've problems at centre back, you've problems at centre forward, it's not the best situation to be in going into a tournament.
That spine, Ryan, that spine could really be affected. I want to move on because we've spent about 15 minutes just talking about Spain. Firstly, to you, Ryan, one name that's not going to be involved at the Euros, which I think we were all kind of hoping would be Zlatan Ibrahimovic. So he's not going to be there. But it's actually a blessing in disguise, do you feel, for the Swedish national team? Oh, you're muted.
I beg your pardon. Let me start that again. I think it could be a blessing in disguise for them because they've got Alexander Isak, who is the future of now. He's still developing, but he's kind of in the Ibrahimovic mold, where, you know, big 6'4" striker. He had a good season, I think, with Real Sociedad, but nothing outstanding. His goals seem to come in bunches, and even though he is such a tall striker, he's still kind of filling out, and I think that makes him a little bit hit and miss in the air. But I think if they can start to build around him and Kulusevski as well, two really talented Swedish players, I think this could be good for them. Now, obviously, you would always like an Ibrahimovic, but as we were talking about, you know, almost with the Ramos thing, there needs to be a time for transition. And I think if you select Ibrahimovic, you have to build your squad around him. And even though he is still a lethal finisher, he is limited now.
Yeah. Dermot, what do you make about the way the Swedes play? They seem to have been very influenced by Roy Hodgson's management in the Scandinavian area decades ago. And they've only now seemed to have come out of that. They have only now seemed to have evolved their tactical nous, particularly when Graham Potter was still coaching at Östersunds. And it seems that to step away from the old style of football, you don't need Zlatan there. In fact, you don't want him there in order to get with the times.
Yeah, I'd agree completely. From a Spanish point of view, I think you'd be worried about Zlatan, what he might do in a game, but you'd also be confident that you can just keep the ball away from him, that he's not going to be an impact on the game. I know that Zlatan is such a big name and he's such a big character and everything, but from a Swedish point of view, I think they're better off without him, really. I'm surprised at how he keeps hanging around, and Zlatan, you know, how long he's going to go on for, I'm not sure, but I don't think it's such a good influence either at club level or at international level. And you know, Sweden do have a lot of very promising players. Isak, I think, is one person who will be very happy that Zlatan's not there, because he's very young, he's very frail. He gets compared to Zlatan Ibrahimovic a lot just because he's tall and Swedish, basically, but they're very different types of players. And I think Isak has a chance to come out of his skin when Zlatan's not there. If they do make him the focal point of the team, the number 9, the guy who they can build their play around, and they have people like Kulusevski who are going to break past him, it makes them a more dangerous team. It makes them more likely to beat Spain. They played against Spain in the qualifiers. Spain had the measure of them in the two games. Sweden looked a bit like a team who were coming together, who were building a new style, maybe, as you say, who were trying to come to move forward. Bringing Zlatan back might have been a retrograde step, might have brought them backwards. So I think without him, in theory anyway, they could be more dangerous in the tournament. Yeah,
there are young players in this side, Ryan. There are, but there's also youngish players who would have to become leaders. Now, Victor Lindelof would be one of those names. However, Manchester United continue to look for a new centre-back to partner Harry Maguire. I think that might be an indication of how they view Victor Lindelof, and he was found wanting in the Europa League final, one of the biggest stages, not the biggest stage, but one of the biggest, and United's biggest game of the entire season. So do you think he might be a liability at an international tournament?
I think
sorry, you want to go ahead, Ryan?
Ryan first.
I think so. No, I think firstly, it's important to say that I think Lindelof is actually a better centre-half than given credit for. I think as a footballer, he's a very good, technically proficient footballer. I think he's really adept at taking the ball and stepping up into midfield to create those overloads vertically. However, and there is a however, I think he has a tendency to switch off at times. And when you are, the centre back for your team, where you have to be in charge and a vocal leader and make sure that you are switched on and switching everyone else on, I think that could be a problem. Harry Maguire at Manchester United does that incredibly well, and I think you see the effects when he isn't in the team. I think Lindelof is a very, very good defender, but I don't see him as a natural leader.
Dermot?
Yeah, no, I just going based on the Europa League final, when I saw him, the way that Gerard Moreno was just much cleverer than him. Like, Lindelof is supposed to be a guy who can read what's happening, who can cover, who's in the right position and is able to be a step ahead of the game. Didn't see that in the Europa League final at all. Gerard Moreno looked a lot just cleverer than him. I think Spain might look to take advantage of that when they meet in the group. It could be a weak point in the Swedish team. Yeah,
fascinating battle. What about Poland? I mean, you can't look beyond Robert Lewandowski, or Lewandowski, as his new name is now Christian, thanks to his teammate Thomas Müller. But will he finally have a strong international tournament for Poland? There's a lack of goals. And of course, the quality of players he has around him at international level is vastly different from Bayern Munich. So the blame can't be entirely falling onto his shoulders. But will we see the best of him here, Ryan? First,
I mean, these are they're not Bayern Munich players, but these are still good players. You look at someone like Zielinski, particularly at Napoli, who had an outstanding season, really, really good creative force as well. It would be remiss of me if I didn't get a Derby County mention here on the show. Kamil Jóźwiak is a very exciting player, very frustrating, but at international level for Poland, since he got into the team, has been very, very good. I would say. Tricky winger that can wriggle away from one or two players, very low centre of gravity, tenacious. His final ball is often what lets him down, but time and time again he gets into those positions. I think so often what has let Robert Lewandowski down for Poland has been the service, but I still think behind him there are good creative players that can service him. I wonder if there is maybe a tactical reason why they seem to be very, very structured, Poland, in the way they go. And I think they just have so many free-flowing players that kind of just go, let's go score 3 goals, and if we concede 4, then it's fine.
Yeah, understood. I mean, historically, they have sprung some upsets in the past, but there would be, this is something that's going to be interesting for me, a sprinkling of Marcel Bielsa in this side. Dermot, I'm sure you would have covered plenty of Bielsa over the years. Matthias Klich was given time off towards the end of the Premier League season so he could get himself ready for this tournament. So are you excited to see a bit of the Bielsa element in the Polish side?
Yeah, and that fits with what you mentioned as well about Sweden, about how they're trying to move forward or to evolve. It's kind of funny that Poland, and Sweden as well, we would associate them with, over the last 20 years anyway, with maybe being well-organized defensive teams who will look to try and nick a goal, maybe especially if they play against Spain in the group. Whereas you look at their squad and you look at that influence from Bielsa, that they should be capable of taking the game to a team like Spain. They're maybe even better going forward than they are defensively. So from my point of view, it'd be interesting to see whether they have that confidence, whether that Klich can bring that idea from Leeds that, we should go for it, that we can take on the big boys on our own terms and we don't have to be worried about it. And I think that would be the worst thing for Spain. That Spain don't want that. Spain would be delighted if they sit back and if they defend. But if Poland look to break quickly and use those Bielsa style tactics to try to get in behind Spain, to go running at them, if Spain are playing Busquets, for example, in centre midfield, and the likes of Klich or some of the other attacking midfielders that Poland have, if they start to run at them, then Spain could be in big trouble. It's, if Poland play to their historical strengths, maybe it wouldn't be quite as interesting for us as neutrals, for sure, and maybe not as dangerous for Spain.
Yeah, okay.
I think one interesting player sort of made back up Robert Lewandowski at centre forward, but we have also seen him maybe deployed out wide a little bit, is Arkadiusz Milik. Now, he has not quite been the same since the serious knee injuries he suffered, but I still think he's a very, very capable striker, and I think he's quite a versatile player as well. He's another one that could really cause someone problems. I would just like to mention that the one player who almost certainly would have been selected had it not been for his ACL injury is Christian Bielik. He of Derby as well, but he is tipped to be one of the new rising stars of Polish football. Very, very capable midfielder who is very adept at playing at centre back in a back three. him playing from deep in a creative role, kind of like a metronome dictating tempo. That would have been interesting to see him in there, particularly as he only recently broke in over the last sort of 12-18 months or so. I think he'll be a miss for that squad as well, because he's a very accomplished player.
Fascinating. Great to see some of those players who aren't Robert Lewandowski really stepping up. But the final team to mention, and we are running out of time, would be Slovakia. Now, interestingly enough, Marek Hamšík decided to just terminate his contract in China in order to go back to Europe to make this tournament itself. Can he still be influential? Dermot first here.
It looks, again, from looking at the Slovakia squad and from what we know of them, it looks like a lot of their hopes will be based around it. It's a big call for him to make to get ready. One thing is that a lot of the teams are going into the tournament running on empty. That if you have played 50, 60 games this season, you've run right into the end. You've been going all the way through pandemic, everything that's happened here. If you have had a couple of months off and been able to get yourself ready, maybe it'd be an advantage for the tournament. Players who've been out injured, for example, and have had a bit of a rest might have an advantage coming into it, and Hamšík as well. If everything, he's probably not going to be physically at the very top of his game, maybe not breaking forward, but he can be the brain for them. And if he can run the game for them, then again, against Spain in the group stages, when it comes down to it, they're going to have to cover him. He could be the danger man for Slovakia.
Yeah, and defensively speaking, and they probably would be under a fair bit of pressure, particularly against a side like Spain, Ryan. We talked about the Bielsa influence. There's a little bit of an Antonio Conte influence at the back as well.
Yeah, I think just to riff off what Dermot said for a minute there as well with Hamšík, I think the other one to not look out for is Vladimir Weiss. I think they're going to carry a big part of the attacking load there. I also think Martin Dubravka in net will be a busy man. But yeah, the influence of Antonio Conte, and I think if they set up to as a back three and to basically keep things very tight in there and break on the counter, that feels like the only way that Slovakia will cause problems. And if you're relying on maybe a 33-year-old Marek Hamšík who has been in China, where the standard of football is not as high as it will be around the rest of the world, you could be in for a series of bad times.
Yeah. Okay, gentlemen, I do need some predictions here. Who's going to be making it out of this group? Dermot first.
I'm tempted to say that Spain will make it out of the group, but I'm not sure I'm going to go that far. I'm going to say that Poland. I like the look of the Polish squad. They have a lot of players who are maybe coming towards going in the right direction. Who this is a tournament where they can kind of burst onto the international scene, where some of the other squads are either gone too far or not quite in that position yet. So I think Poland might even win the group, and Spain to go down and finish in second. To get surprised maybe by Poland, maybe draw with Sweden, maybe be surprised by Poland as well, and then for it to come down and to beat Slovakia and scrape through into the last 16. That's from Spain's point of view, I hope it doesn't go that way. I hope it goes better, but I'm really concerned about them heading into the tournament, and I think it might take them a while to get themselves sorted. So maybe that could happen.
Before we get to you, Ryan, I just want to check with you, Dermot, because you're focused on Spain as the athletics correspondent. If they go out a bit earlier than expected, do you get to start your summer holidays a bit earlier than expected?
I think you might have picked up on some subconscious in my head there. That may well be the case, but obviously I hope that they go all the way in the tournament and win the trophy, as that would be best for everybody.
Okay. Well, Ryan, you don't get that benefit because you're more generally covering the Euros. But for this group specifically, Group E, who's making it out?
I think Poland will win the group, and I think Spain will stumble in a whirling ball of chaos into the runners-up spot.
Okay, gentlemen, we have to get some general predictions in for the entire tournament, not just for this group, starting with who are going to be the winners of UEFA Euro 2020.
I think Portugal have an amazing squad. It's kind of crept up on me because not that many of their players are based here in Spain in La Liga, and João Felix hasn't had a great time of it with Atletico Madrid, even though they won the La Liga title. But if you look through their squad, man for man, they have a lot of incredible players. France is an obvious one as well, as the World Cup holders, and with Benzema back, but I'm not sure how that's going to fit. It looks amazing up front that you bring Benzema in with Mbappe and Griezmann up front, but it might take them a little time to get through it. So Portugal are playing Spain here on Friday in a friendly. It's going to be very interesting to see how that goes, but I kind of fancy them to do it.
I think it's really hard to look past France. But I would like to just throw the name of Belgium out there. Now we need to see what Kevin De Bruyne is his fitness wise. Obviously, he reported that broken nose and an orbital bone, but Romelu Lukaku has just been deadly this season. And that squad is so talented, even with the form of Eden Hazard over the last couple of years not being good. That is still such a good Belgium squad. And forget dark horses, like they're a real favourite for me, Belgium. I think they could challenge France.
Yeah, don't want to go completely against Ryan there, but I have a feeling that Belgium, this is too late for them, that this generation of players, especially in their defence, that they're going to, they're still relying on a lot of the same guys. And again, with my La Liga hat on, Eden Hazard has had a disastrous couple of years at Madrid. When I saw De Bruyne going off in the Champions League final, was really kind of worried about Belgium, what will happen. And what happens with Roberto Martinez, the Belgian coach, is going to be super interesting. Were they to crash out, there's a couple of teams, big teams in La Liga who are looking for new coaches. And, again, with my hat on, that's something that we're going to be covering or looking at pretty closely on The Athletic over the next couple of weeks.
All right. I do love this question. Dark horses of the tournament.
I like Italy. I like Italy. I think Mancini's done a good job there. Now, Italy always consider tournament favourites, but I haven't really been hearing many people talk about them as tournament favourites. But I'm a big fan of what they've got going forward. I know that sort of at the back they're still in a transition period. I like the midfield of Jorginho, Verratti, Pellegrini, and up front you've got a lot of good options, and in Donnarumma in net. I like this team. I think this is a nice balanced squad.
This is a strange one maybe, but I kind of fancy the Netherlands. Seen a bit of them in the Nations League and thought that they would look surprisingly good. They've got a lot of young players. They've got De Jong who's coming through. They had Koeman, who seemed to have knitted everything together and things seem to be going really well for them. And then, he left to go to Barcelona. But it's funny, the Netherlands, they always seem to do what you don't expect in a tournament. They haven't even been to a couple of tournaments recently. And yeah, I think as somebody who people are not talking about at all, I think they might do better in the tournament than we think.
All right. Golden Boot. Let's start with Dermot here first this time. Who's going to be scoring the most goals for UEFA Euro 2020?
Cristiano Ronaldo.
True.
It's a boring answer, but Ronaldo, he's not going to be around forever. Even if he maybe thinks that he is going to be around. And again, I think Poland are going to do really well in the tournament. And yeah, not the most interesting of answers, but I'm going to say Ronaldo.
Ryan?
Kylian Mbappe.
Come on, man. He's a good shout.
Absolute superstar, and everyone's talking about Karim Benzema's return to France, but this is Kylian Mbappe's team now. This is Kylian Mbappe's world and France, and we're all just living in it.
That's true. And particularly if they do go on as one of the favorites to win the tournament, then they'll have the most amount of games to achieve Golden Boot status. What about the Golden Gloves? Now, this traditionally also quite often goes to the winner. So are you backing Hugo Lloris for this, Ryan, or are you going to go with someone else?
I have a very strange feeling that the England goalkeeper, whoever that is, might get it, just because we'll go out in like the last 16 or the quarters in a 1-0 loss, but we'll have had a clean sheet every game up until then.
True.
It would just be classic England.
Yeah, very, very pragmatic under Gareth Southgate, so it's entirely plausible. Dermot?
Yeah, just to pick up on England there, it's a funny one, because just talking to some of the Spanish people here and following the media here, like what Ryan said, is historically you can't argue against it. It's what seems to happen to England all the time. But people here are super impressed by this new England team. Mason Mount and Phil Foden in particular, but also like Kieran Trippier, who's had a great season for Atletico Madrid here. And when you asked me about the dark horses, England's name actually came into my head. It's strange as an Irishman to be tipping England to do well in a tournament is a unusual one, and it's not feeling great with me even as I'm saying it here. But if they do keep things tight at the back, and if Jordan Pickford, if he plays, and his form has been better. I think he's had a couple of wobbles over time, but his form has been better towards the end of the season. Yeah, why not? Even if they get to the semi-finals, as they did at the last World Cup, and keep a few clean sheets, then he could be in the running for it. Win the tournament, I'm not sure, but it's a strange one to be kind of looking forward to seeing England playing in a tournament. I was going to say neutral. As an Irish person, I'm not sure how neutral you are when it comes to the England team, but I'm definitely surprising myself to say that I'm looking forward to seeing how they do in the tournament.
I suspect I know the answer for this one from Ryan, at least. I'm not really certain who Dermot's going to say, but the player of the tournament. So let's go Dermot first here.
Yeah, I'm going to say Bruno Fernandes. Been super impressed with him from what I've seen at Manchester United. I know that the Europa League final, he was swallowed up pretty well by by Villarreal, and maybe he's had a long season, so hopefully he'll be able to get a bit of a rest. But I think that Portugal are starting to build their team around him, and he's going to step up. It's the first big tournament for him. It's a chance for him to show, you know, on the European level or the world level what he's capable of. And I have a sneaky feeling that things are going to go very, very well for him.
Who's on penalty duties for Portugal? Dermot?
That could be an interesting conversation around the training ground. I would imagine Cristiano might be able to pull rank and get on them, but were he to miss one, which, you know, we've seen happen before, then the conversations could start to get interesting.
Ryan, I'm not going to say who I think you're going to nominate
Kylian
as player. I knew it.
Kylian Mbappe. I don't even need to analyze the pick. It's Kylian Mbappe.
Yeah, he is such a bright spark for the French squad and for at least neutral fans around the globe and for France fans as well. Disappointment of the tournament then, Ryan. What do you reckon?
Spain. It's just in my head the image of like when France just completely, just the wheels fell off this clown car, and they went into that was when France went into full reboot mode. I think this could be Spain's tournament for that, just as they go.
That's true. And I mean, the wheels fell off. They couldn't even get off the bus at one point in time. Dermot, what is the disappointment? This could be a player, it could be a team, a manager, anything.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Belgium again. I think, picking up on Ryan there, were Spain to get through to the last 16 and at least do something, then they would be seen as not a bad tournament for them. If they do blow up completely, then, you know, it'll also be pretty interesting to follow from here. But I think Belgium, because people are tipping them, and from what I said before, that this tournament has come around a couple of years too late for them. They should have won maybe the last Euros or the World Cup in Russia. They've kept a lot of the same players together. And excuse me, looking at Eden Hazard here, Zinedine Zidane gave him every chance to come back and do something for Madrid in the Champions League this season, especially when he picked him against Chelsea. Set the team up completely to get the best out of Hazard. And I have a feeling that, especially if De Bruyne is not at 100%, that Roberto Martinez is going to do the same thing for him. I can imagine they'll get through the group. Belgium don't have the most difficult group, but I can see it just not going so well for them. I see Thierry Henry's gone back in as assistant coach as well. There's a lot of big personalities there, you know, linking back to when things didn't go so well for France before. And if things do start to go badly, if there's a cloud over Roberto Martinez's future, I can see some of those big personalities starting to fall out with each other. So Belgium could be an interesting one to watch from that point of view.
I am not envious of either of you giving your predictions, because it could come back and bite you on the bottom come mid-July. I just asked the questions, but I sincerely want to thank you both for joining me here today. It's been an absolute privilege and absolute honor, and we're looking forward to all the extended coverage from the both of you on the Athletic app throughout the course of the entire tournament. So Dermot and Ryan, we'll speak to you again very soon. Enjoy all the matches. It's going to be keeping you very, very busy.
Thanks very much, Adam. Really enjoyed it. Looking forward to it.
Thanks very much.
Speak to you both soon. And we'll be back, of course, with more previews and so forth for UEFA Euro 2020.